Welcome to the Financial Technology Report, a leading information source on financial technology companies and solutions. Today, we speak with Ying Tan, CEO of Habito, a digital platform designed to make mortgages and home buying more straightforward. Habito searches thousands of products from more than 90 lenders and connects customers with brokers, surveyors, and conveyancer partners. The company also provides a complete home buying service that combines financing, property surveys, and legal work in one place. Ying is an experienced entrepreneur with a background in investment banking and accounting. He previously founded Dynamo, a leading UK mortgage brokerage, which he successfully scaled and exited after 15 years. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Ying, so great to be with you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to have a chat with you.
So we are talking about financial technology and your path, your entrepreneurial path. You're in the mortgage space. Maybe to kick off, I was looking at your Trustpilot reviews, and they are remarkable. Over 10,000, and I think they're perfect scores for Habito. How does one achieve that? Clearly, you've built an amazing product. So maybe give us an overview of Habito and what makes it so special.
Yeah, and just to correct you a little bit on Trustpilot, that they're not all perfect, that there are definitely some blemishes on there, like you'd expect for all businesses. But yeah, we're very proud of over 10,000 Trustpilot reviews, which are we're 4.9 out of 5. So very, very proud of that. So yeah, going back to your question, a bit of background about the business and maybe a bit of background about myself and how I pivoted into it, because I wasn't the founder of the business, but the found business in 2016, really like many during that period of time when technology was starting to make its imprint in many industries. Financial services was one of the ones that was untouched because of its complexity. And the founder, Dan Eggety, had gone to a mortgage broker to get financing for himself and just found the process pretty horrible and thought, there's got to be a way of making this more straightforward. And so Habito was born in 2016, and like many VC-backed businesses, raised a lot of money at a time where, it was very exciting, and it's still very exciting to be part of the fintech ecosystem. And it did exceptionally well, built a really strong brand, really started to scale, some great technology, recruited the best-in-class people. But again, like many VC companies, turning into a profit was the challenge. And it put product and customer at the forefront of everything. But that requires money and investment. And when that money and investment dries up, there are challenges that inherently come with that. And Liz Truss came along a few years back and made some difficult decisions within the economy. And, things became pretty tough and the funding dried up. The business was hemorrhaging at a time between £500,000 to £1 million a month. I knew the business from afar. I founded a previous business, a bit more of a traditional mortgage brokerage, but in the financial services space. My background is ex-investment banking. I worked at Deutsche Bank, UBS, Goldman Sachs. I set up similar to Dan, really, because I was a landlord looking to get a mortgage from my mortgage broker. And I was telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. I thought, Brian, if that's the mortgage broker can offer me, I set up a business myself, and I grew it and scaled it, sold it to what was at the time a FTSE 250 business, and I exited. And it was at a time when I exited that Habito was going through a challenging time. So I saw the opportunity. I reached out to Dan, the founder, and he said, we're in a difficult space at the moment. Would I be keen to come on as CEO? And I reflected and thought, actually, if I could be a founder to CEO, I would come on board. And therefore, I need to get enough shareholding of the business to make me feel like that founder, which I duly did. I'm also the largest shareholder at Habito as well. So we continued that journey. My objective was to turn the business around. And I did that. And we're now in a position where we're regularly break even and profitable 7 or 8 months out of the last 12. And, we're on a really strong trajectory. So Habito is a platform. It's a digital mortgage brokerage, but it also has various other bolt-ons which make the home ownership journey far more easier to say, I want to buy a property, to getting the keys. And that's ultimately the objective.
And so from the user's perspective, they go to your site and they're able to figure out fairly quickly and intuitively who the best possible mortgage providers there are?
Well, First of all, we need the information. If you want to give the best advice, you need to make sure you understand the customer you're talking to. So there's a fact find process, which they fill in questions on the fact find, online. It's a very intuitive digital form. And then once they've answered those questions, the data is transferred live to a qualified mortgage broker. It's not AI or anything like that. It's a human being. And the technology and the AI that we do use is on the background, which does all the heavy lifting and the mundane, repetitive tasks, allowing the advisor to advise via a live chat. So when we say we're a digital mortgage broker, we don't just get the customer's details digitally. We actually speak digitally. We don't pick up the phone or meet them face to face like traditional brokers do. Over 95% of our business is conducted online via live chats, in essence, which is unique in the UK marketplace, at least, where the majority of business is still done face to face or on the telephone and not fully digitally.
Mm-hmm. And how has that made an impact, I guess, in this overall market of other digital brokers? Are there ways to look at your market share and maybe how you've improved in capturing more of the volume?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, adoption initially, was when we first started 7 or 8 years ago was lukewarm. But, as we invested in getting our brand out there, that obviously built up traction. But the generation today is very much about they expect things in demand. You get your Uber, you go and you're at the cab's here. You want to watch whatever movie you want to watch on Netflix and it's there for you. Mortgages is not such a simplistic product, unfortunately, but they still have the same high level of expectation. And therefore, the adoption of what we're doing now, as the years go on, is getting greater and greater because it's normal now to do that. 10 years ago, you'd be afraid to put your credit cards online. Now you plaster it all over the internet because you're confident and it's just the way we do things now. So, I think from that perspective, that change in mindset and the demographic of the people, because the younger generation are slightly older now, ready to buy houses, that has helped us gain market share. But it's still very much a cottage industry. And, in the UK, there are mortgage brokers everywhere. And whilst we're one of the largest digital mortgage brokers, we probably still only have a couple of percent of the market. But even the largest person, and that would be a traditional broker, which would maybe only have 4 or 5% of the market. So it's a very cottage industry. Lots of 1, 2, 3 man bands. But I think the movement and the way things are progressing, I think businesses structured like us, which really embrace technology to help streamline the process, will become even more popular than it already is.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about when you were evaluating whether or not to join Habito, like the thought process around a turnaround, going into a turnaround situation versus a company that's stable or, at least moderately growing. What gave you the confidence that you could turn around the company?
Well, firstly, how do you feel? Extremely scared. It's a lot of money, of your own money, hard-earned money you're putting in a business that is losing money. Many thought I was crazy. I had a previous exit. I'm relatively well-known and an established figure in our industry in the UK. And people thought not only am I risking a significant amount of money, I'm risking the reputation that I built so well over many years. But I'm in a unique position. I'm an entrepreneur who's already started, scaled, and sold a business. I'm ex-investment banking. I understand the markets. I understand how to deal with VCs and private equity firms. But at the same time, I understand the industry, having built a business myself from ground up in more traditional methods. So I felt I was very well placed to do the turnaround time. And what I saw in the business is what maybe other people didn't, because I was looking at the basic economics. The productivity of our advisors is 3 or 4 times better than a traditional advisor. We do 40 to 45 mortgages per advisor per month. A traditional broker may only do 10 or 15. We had enormous amount of organic lead flow. And that's because of our retention of our customers, because of the exceptional service we give, but also because of the heavy investment of my predecessors into the brand. So people knew who the Habito brand was and came to us. We had such big organic traffic. We had such profitability. Why is the business hemorrhaging so much money? And some of it comes down to basic business commercial acumen. And that was one of my strengths, having bootstrapped a business from ground up, from 0 to 200 staff over many years. So I felt very confident that I knew the levers I needed to pull to get that business turned around. And I went in with open eyes, premises. Initially, there was quite a lot of C-suite executives on quite big salaries, and that wasn't sustainable given how the business was contracted. But also commercial contracts were negotiated maybe not as well as it could have been, and we were paying much higher than we should have been. And I knew how to benchmark that because I'd already grown a business in a similar vertical, or in the same vertical, I should say. And I'm saying, well, why are we paying this when we should be paying this? I know the comparison. And I could see that across 10, 20, 30, 40 contracts. And So you can start the forecast very quickly. If I negotiate that to the price it should be, if we are moving to a hybrid away from my expensive London premises, it's not so much of a gamble because they're all known quantities. You just need to execute it correctly to make it happen. And it's less driven on, oh, what if I drive 20% more business? Because that becomes a bit of more of an unknown. You have to invest. And whereas these are factual things where I knew I can get from A to B. And therefore, it was a lesser risk for me. But I think that comes with inherently understanding the market I operate in.
How much did culture factor into your strategy in going into the business and turning it around?
I love that question, because culture is something massively ingrained in my DNA. The business that I built previously and founded, culture was at the heart of everything we could do. And we couldn't necessarily pay, having bootstrapped the business, we couldn't pay the highest salaries, we couldn't attract necessarily the most educated and best talent because we couldn't afford to. So we had to build a culture that people wanted to come and work for us. And by putting the customer, everything at the forefront of what we were doing, we created a really strong culture. And culture doesn't mean having donuts on a Friday and going home early on a Wednesday and that type of thing. It means giving people autonomy, giving people trust, transparency, and the ability to feel like they're part of a journey. And that is what we were exceptionally good at previously, and it's ingrained in my DNA. So when I went over to Habito, luckily the culture was already there. But doing the adjustments I needed to do the turnaround, there was obviously a big risk that culture could be damaged really quite heavily. But I'm very grateful and thankful that our retention is amazing. Our attrition is extremely low. So whilst increasing revenue, wiping out losses, increasing headcount, and turning the business around, we lost very few staff. And I think a lot of that is down to the culture, the vision, the transparency, and making people feel that they're belonging and part of that, and they're part of a bigger picture to make that purpose and that journey easier for customers in terms of getting mortgages and the home buying and the home ownership process.
Mm-hmm. Are there certain philosophies that you keep in mind almost like on a daily basis? Like how intentional are you when you're interacting with your teams?
One of my most popular words that I would say is well done. Thank you. Really simple words, but leaders don't use it enough. You need to congratulate your team when they've done well. Your words from the CEO saying well done may take you best part of 1 second, but will make the day for somebody. Thanking people and showing gratitude makes a massive impact on people, when they've done something for you and you've taken the time out to do that because you're in a fortunate position. And I never take that for granted. That is definitely one, to show gratitude and be thankful and be appreciative of the people you work with to show that. Second thing is, if you say you're going to do something, do it. I think that builds trust, giving people transparency that even in bad times, they understand it's bad. They may not agree with some of the decisions you're making, but they understand why you're making them. And that's super important. And then another philosophy is making sure you surround yourself with the strongest people. I think if you want to scale a business, I think they say you're the average of the 5 people closest to you. And that's so true, because if you think you can do it yourself, you can't. And you need people, you need to empower them, to give them the autonomy. And if you do that, then you're able to do the execution work and the bigger picture strategy thing. And that allows you to build a business at scale.
Mm-hmm. Are you a hybrid environment or, distributed?
I would even go, we're almost remote. We are hybrid in that we have an office in London, but it's generally just the exec and the leadership team that go in. And the majority of other people will work remotely all over the UK. That's a shift probably since COVID, like many businesses. But unlike many businesses who have gone back to full-time in the office, we saw no decrease or fall in productivity. We've got strong KPIs that can measure that. And if anything, people are happier and, retention was good. Revenue, productivity was all positive. So there was no reason to go and increase our costs by having an office. We tried to replicate that with our virtual. We meet up quarterly. We have great in-person quarterly events, Christmas parties, summer parties. So we still have that human contact, which is massively important, but it's not needed from a day-to-day basis or environment.
You recently had a great summer.
Yes.
You did some travel. Maybe tell us a little bit about this nice break you took with the family.
Yeah, well, look, I'll start a little bit earlier. When I founded my business and I exited after 15 years, I sacrificed a lot. Like anyone who's doing business will know, the long hours and not taking holiday. And even when you do take a holiday, are you really there, present, or are you minds elsewhere? So I promised myself when I exited the business I founded back in 2021 that I would make more time over the summers. And I've done that. Last summer, actually, I was in the States and I was out for 6 weeks, kind of went over to New York to Chicago, flew over Chicago to Seattle, and then drove down the West Coast down to kind of LA, across to Vegas. So had a great holiday there. Previous year, I went to Southeast Asia, 6 different countries. So yeah, I've really tried to enjoy the summer. And then this summer, I celebrated my 50th birthday in Ireland, and on a couple of separate holidays to Dubai. Along the fjords in Norway on a cruise ship was the first time. My parents used to talk about that all the time. Great cruise ships, but you eat a lot, but it's great. And kind of felt I was always too young, but maybe I'm come to an age where maybe I enjoy that a little bit more now, and the kids loved it. And then I also went to Thailand because it was my second son's 18th birthday. So yeah, and I know that sounds very privileged and very lucky, but equally, I come from quite humble beginnings. I worked extremely hard to get where I am, to be able to afford that balance, which maybe I didn't have before. And for context, for those listeners, want to understand my story a little bit more. My dad came over to the UK in 1958 from Malaysia. He was the eldest of 11 children and had £20 in his pocket, and hitchhiked. It took him 4 months to hitchhike from Malaysia to the UK in the late 50s. And he went through trials and tribulations, and he worked hard when he arrived here. And he worked, even up to his late 40s and 50s. He had 2 jobs, working cleaning toilets in the evening, day job during the daytime, office job and things. And seeing how hard they work, and that mindset, that attitude of can do, which, dare I say, maybe the next generation don't always have, was massively inspirational to me. And I think forms a bedrock of my drive as an entrepreneur.
I was just heading into this direction of drive, and it's somewhat frequent that I speak with these founders and CEOs who've already achieved considerable success, and then they reach kind of midlife, so to speak, and they're debating what to do next. You decided to go right back in and build another company.
Took a bit of time out, to be fair, but
Okay,
yeah.
you took a break.
Yeah, a year or two it was. But even in the year or two, I'd invested in a few other companies. I was still doing advisory work, et cetera, et cetera. So sorry to interrupt.
So the question is, what ultimately drives you?
My family is a lot. I'm the youngest of 2, but I have 5 children. My eldest is now at university. My 2 eldest children are at university. So, initially it was for my parents. Some of it was just to make them proud. Then it was also to be financially secure so I could retire them early. Then that paradigm shifts a little bit as I have my own family, and 5 children who go to private school with big school fees. There's a financial commitment that you need to do to maintain a certain level. But I don't just do it for the money. And I think that's maybe where you're going is, I do it for the ride, and I enjoy it. I'm very passionate about everything I do. And I think the moment I stop enjoying it, and I don't think I'll continue to do it. But I'm not what some may think, and maybe my CV doesn't show that, but I'm not a workaholic or someone who has to feel like I work. I do have an objective goal to be able to slow down, much earlier than retirement age, and maybe just flip into more advisory work, consultancy. And this is probably my last gig of being kind of front and center as CEO, but never say never, as they say. But
I'm wondering, I'm always curious when I talk to a fellow former investment banker that turned into an entrepreneur, what advice? I mean, I think there's so many other people out there, so many smart people, particularly in investment banking, that could succeed as an entrepreneur, but they maybe feel like it's too risky, or it's hard to take a drop in that comp. So what insight would you give to someone? It doesn't have to be an investment banker. It could be someone just working in a fairly high-paying corporate gig.
Let's say you're earning a 6-figure salary. Why would you ever want to stop that? So you're probably paying yourself nothing. And if you do start to pay yourself, you've got to pay all your staff first, all your premises, all your costs first, then see what's left over to pay yourself. The reality is I never paid myself much for many years, but I was lucky enough to have a portfolio that supported that and had the bigger picture and the patience to wait for that big exit event. But not many people have the patience for that, and not many people have the ability to be patient for that. So, my advice to those people who want to do it, firstly, you've got to think carefully, because entrepreneurship is glamorized probably more so than it should. The majority of entrepreneurs, unfortunately, don't make it. But at the same time, if you can take the risk, I'm not a risk taker, which people often find hard to believe. I try to think I'm a very much calculated risk taker, but, I think as long as you've calculated the risk, there's nothing more rewarding than building something. My last job that I worked for someone else, I was 26 years old, 2001, working at Goldman Sachs. I was one of the youngest vice presidents, VPs there at the time. And that was 25 years ago. I can honestly only just say that I only started to earn the type of salary that I was earning then, 25 years then. Of course, I've been lucky enough to have an exit or two, which is more than compensated for that. But the reality is it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not as glamorous and sexy as some people believe. There's a lot of hard graft, a lot of late nights, a lot of sacrifice. But if you're passionate about something and you believe in it, and not just about the money, and the money will then come as a byproduct of doing what you enjoy and what you're passionate about. And I think that's where I got lucky.
Excellent. Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person? I happen to believe it's probably going to be your father, but if you tell us about a person who's had a profound influence on you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say my parents, actually, not just my father. I think it has to be my parents. Some people were very lucky, I guess. I've worked with some really great people, but in terms of, as my senior and manager, but I only worked for 5 years, when I graduated in 21 to going on my own was only from 21 to 26. So I also had some good managers during that time. I didn't work with anybody, particularly in depth to kind of see them as my mentor or anything like that. So I've kind of fumbled my way through myself without having a particular mentor, like now there's clear business mentors or people that you look up to who have guided you on your entrepreneur journey. I didn't have that fortune. My sister was always a wise head. She's 10 years older than me, far more academic and intelligent than I am, but maybe not as business minded as me. She was always a good person to go to, and my parents, and obviously more latterly, my wife and family. So it's probably a boring answer. There's no one person publicly or privately, but it's just that my family environment is what's inspired me and continues to.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Well, our current charity, charity full stop, I'm really passionate about, probably since 2013, 14. Every year we do a big event. We've climbed the 3 peaks, which are the 3 biggest mountains in the UK in 24 hours. We've done 50K walk along the coast. I've done marathons, Tough Mudder, which is like a mud kind of event. And actually next month, I'm going to Machu Picchu in Peru to climb that over 7 or 8 days. And that's all for charity. So there've been different charities over that time, but I do like trying to give back. But this particular one is a homeless charity called New Horizon, specifically for young homeless people. And that resonates with our business very well as well, since, the purpose of what we do is to help people find home. Homeless people often don't have a home. So, anything I can do to help their cause is something I'm quite passionate about. But, I've supported many charities over the last 10 years.
Wonderful. Well, Ying, I want to thank you again for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, pleasure. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time and for inviting me on.